Welcome back to the Members Welcome podcast, brought to you by 2B Agency, where we share new innovations, learnings, and implementations in our practice as community managers and strategists. To learn more about building your online community, visit www.2bagency.co. We have Emily and Andrew back with us here again. Welcome back. And since we last talked, what's new?
It's a kind of a tough time as an agency owner right now because it's budget season for all of our clients, which means they're asking for proposals, which is great. You know, we obviously want the work, but it also means revising them a lot when they inevitably cut their budgets through the budget process. So it's a lot of back and forth, a lot of revision, but you know, it's always like this at the end of the year.
For sure. Emily, what about you?
I've been battling like a cough for the past few weeks. And I thought I was like, in the past, my understanding was like, you have a cough for like a week and then you're good. But it's really 3 weeks. And I'm like, I Googled like sinus infections and I'm like, they're supposed to last like 4 to 6 weeks. And I was like, this is not acceptable. So I've been battling that. And I also recently just got in my copy of the Britney Spears memoir, The Woman in Me. And I'm like, really excited to read it because of just like all of the press that I've been hearing about it. And like, I think
did she write it or did she get an like someone to write it for her and she was involved in it?
I believe that she wrote it. I could be wrong.
She did.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Huh. There's been a lot of media out there, obviously because of the whole thing with her,
conservatorship. Yeah.
But was there just the big one on Netflix that just came out? I think I just saw it on Netflix, or it was one of the Hulu or one of them.
I think there's one on Hulu, like maybe a few years ago.
There's a recent one I think that came out.
Okay.
It probably has something to do with the book and timing.
Yeah. I read like a GQ article on it. It's pretty crazy. So I'm not sure if I'm going to read the book yet, but I'm curious to know what you think afterwards.
Yeah, all the weird Instagram posts from her and stuff like that. Like, just, oh man, it's, you wonder why, but like, no one is supposed to be that famous, that young.
Yeah.
I think some good stories.
I'm sure. I think this is just kind of just a human condition. We tend to look at other people from an outside lens, but when you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes and inside of them, right? So it's that compassion that we all need for each other, which I don't think paparazzis do have that, which is kind of part of the problem, So for me, I'm getting ready for the holidays, and I always have this mom guilt when it comes to gifts for my kid, because I don't want to spoil her thinking like, oh, Christmas is one day they just got to get tons of gifts for no reason. But I also know the spirit of the holidays and how much they enjoy it. So you can ask Andrew, every year I go through this like mental torment about, am I giving them enough or am I not giving them enough? And I think the answer is like, whatever it is, it's fine. But it's just like something I had to like tell myself to be okay with. And also I grew up Chinese. So like gifting during Christmas is not celebrated, but gifting during holidays is not the same at all. Like, it's not like material thing we give money to each other.
It's a really American thing, the way we do Christmas.
Yeah. So I'm just confused about Christmas most years.
Yeah, we were just talking about how like the crazy Black Friday like lineup at 4 a.m. is like basically done now because of e-commerce, right? Like, you can go get a $125 TV right now on Amazon if you wanted to, right? Like, why do you got to line up at Walmart 4 o'clock in the morning? But like, it's just, the whole consumerism in over the holidays is just at another level. And, I don't know, it's kind of, I actually really like the holidays. I just like the vibe that is kind of like, the holiday spirit.
Nostalgic kind of for you.
Yeah. But I grew up like in a more American, style childhood, right? With the Christmas tree and the gifts and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we're all a byproduct of our upbringing, right? And a byproduct of our culture. So it's.
Yes. Well, speaking of culture and shifting in just behaviors, I guess let's get into today's topic, huh? So last episode, we discussed how students and professionals can leverage communities for their growth. And we've kind of discussed different kind of communities and their similarities and differences. And we realized that in this new digital age, the difference between a student and a professional might be shrinking in some ways because all the resources and knowledge that's available to everybody, YouTube and community platforms. And I think speaking of that distance shrinking, we cannot leave AI out of this conversation. So today, we're going to focus on the AI impact on community and kind of go one level deeper and kind of talk about maybe the community's members' behavior and attitude and how will that shift with AI in our lives. And I guess we should also talk about there's kind of misconception out there about what exactly AI is. So I guess we'll start with that. I'm going off script right now. But yeah, when you guys think of AI, what comes up to you first?
A few things come to mind when I'm thinking about AI right now. One is that we've been around AI for a really long time. And if you do anything in Photoshop, you're using AI, right? If you're using anything, you're listening to a Dolby Digital 5.1 surround system, you're using AI because they're using digital signal processing to create that virtual environment, right? So I think the first thing is AI has been around for a really long time, or machine learning, artificial intelligence, that type of stuff. But what is new right now is the layering of natural language processing over AI, right? And so now, before you had to be very technical to work with AI and to make it do things. And, and actually a job that has been around for a very long time is a data scientist, right? Just going through enormous sets of data and using machine learning and artificial intelligence to make sense of that data, or to process it or transform it in a certain way. And I say this because we do a lot of data manipulation when we do CRM implementations, right? But today, I think the really interesting thing is that we have the ability to layer this natural language to tell AI to do really complicated things, but do it in very plain speak. And I think that's where we are right now. And you keep hearing this, AI is having its iPhone moment. And I think that's somewhat true that, we're, because of the ability for the common person to use AI, that is basically the iPhone moment, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's where we are right now. There's too many there's too much fear mongering. We don't know what's going to happen with AI. We don't know how it's going to innovate. We don't know anything, to be honest with you, right now. But I think the coolest thing is this ability to interface with AI through natural language. I think that's one of the cooler things that I see and when I think of AI right now and kind of where we are in the evolution.
What about you, Emily?
I think I'm behind the times. I guess.
You are actually 99% of the world right now, I want to say. So when you okay, fine, you've heard those terms, right? In articles, in news, people just in everything. So when people say that, what's your first impression? What are they talking about?
I think that a lot of people, not the people that I work with specifically, but the people in the media and the people that are writing the articles are talking about things that are really big and also hard to describe. For myself, when Lisa, you open up with a question what do you think AI is? I'm I don't know how to put into words. It's it's almost a feeling for me. It's we're moving forward and we're advancing, but we don't really have the way to communicate it. So for example, I like to follow a lot of science communicators. So they're able to bring that information to the public to make it digestible. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we've really gotten a lot of people that are able to communicate exactly what AI is and what it's doing with the world, on an average person level. And so I think that's also part of why I feel a little bit behind the times, because I know it's big and it's vast and it's grand, but my place in it is a lot smaller than like a lot of people might assume that like they are at. And so I'm like a little like monopoly piece, like moving along the board. And then like, oh, like someone just bought like this landmark, and like, oh, like my next round changes. And like, I'm just like going along that right now.
That's actually a really interesting analogy of, so we're definitely like in this crazy hype cycle right now with AI for sure. And I think to the consumer, the B2C consumer, the vast majority of people out there, we don't care, right? It doesn't really matter. But if you're in a business environment where AI is maybe affecting your industry, and it certainly is for us as marketers and community builders and technologists, right? Like it's a really fascinating time. And I think the problem that I have is that the media hypes everything because of that clickbait model, right? And so, you know, like it's really easy to fearmonger around the Terminator coming back to kill everybody, right? Like, and that's a fun story actually, and it makes sense, right? Like, oh shit, like what if AI does this? And, do you remember like 6 months ago, there was a story about a Google engineer who basically got fired because he thought that the AI was like sentient. I don't know if you, but there was a thing out there where he was interfacing with the AI, and like he was like, oh no, like this thing is sentient. It's like a real thing. And when you think about like what that actually means, it means you need to be able to replicate what's going on in the human brain in a machine. We don't even understand how the human brain fully works yet, right? And so how can we say that we've created something sentient, right? And so I think there's just even the best in the world, right, are kind of at odds about the future of AI and the benefits of it and where it's going. I just know that it makes, I think, what I can guarantee, from my perspective, is AI is going to make remedial tasks like a lot easier for everyone, right? It's going to automate things. Automation is going to get smarter because of AI, right? But there still needs to be human intervention. So I think it's kind of like the internet made communication, information, data just flow at the speed of light, basically. There's an equivalency to that. I don't know what it is in terms of productivity or output or whatever, but I think there's an equivalency in AI of similarly kind of what the internet did to information and passing stuff around.
I think so. Okay, I have a comment about the human brain thing, because I read a lot of science fiction, maybe too much, and I feel like before anybody can replicate the brain activity, we need to have quantum computers, because quantum computer has to the whole what's that word called, the how you perceive the electrons feels its path.
It's about like you
something
can actually be in one place or two places.
Correct. And then right. So like it's that quantum state is collapsible at any moment, right? And I feel like with human brain, everything we experience is perception. It's not fact. So, and the computer always runs on facts and data, right? So I think the only way to replicate it, a brain activity, we need a quantum computer first.
Yeah, no, that's right. Because someone could literally see a crayon as green, and another person could see it as literally red.
Yeah,
because they're colorblind.
Yeah,
whatever.
So their perception is like their quantum state, and there could be conflicting quantum states. So like, how do you resolve that? So anyway, that was my.
None of us are qualified to talk about this, by the way. And the only reason I can probably talk about this is because we have a baby book, like quantum physics for like babies, and it actually explains this idea of anyways.
Yes. And then for back to the AI topic, I think for me, when I think about AI right now, I think about stable diffusion and ChatGPT or ChatGPT equivalent, like BART, Bing, whatever. I think those are the only really two new things. Because everything we talked about is like, it's software, it's data, it's algorithm, like all like Andrew mentioned, all these programs have been doing it for years and years and years, maybe decades, right? But what's new right now is stable diffusion and the ChatGPT equivalent. And I think as a creator, those two things has changed the entire world for me, changed the creator economy and changed the access point, the entry point of that creator economy. Yeah, I just think it just allows, like, with these two AI addition to our society, it just opened up all these new economic opportunities for individuals. That's from like my point of view, right? And I know that all these companies are kind of trying to capture that and trying to figure out, but like to me, I don't really understand all the infrastructure, the coding, all that stuff required. I'm just seeing it from a user perspective. So at this moment in time, it's awesome for humanity. It's going to increase our productivity. It's going to, make a lot of people very rich, I think. Right. Yeah. But, and I'm not obviously at the Elon level of thinking about the downfall of how that's going to bring about. And honestly, I don't even think he knows. There's no way anybody of us can predict. So for us to think that there's some sort of human intervention that we can do now to stop all these what if things that's going to happen is very arrogant of us. That's kind of my stance on AI right now. And I totally agree with what Andrew said.
So
we just don't know.
I actually just posted on LinkedIn yesterday about AI. And so I just got a Google Pixel 8 Pro. And so it's the newest like Google phone. And it's the first time I've actually tried to move over from an iPhone and like stay off of an iPhone. And by the way, all the stock Android stuff is awesome for any nerds out there. But the really amazing feature that this new Pixel is, and the processor is like the latest generation processor is built for AI, but it's all about using AI to edit photos. And so they have this thing called Magic Eraser where literally like, I'll circle like, I'll try to take a picture of like the mountain, right? And there's like a bunch of cars in the way in the road. And so I'll just like circle all the cars and then bam, it just erases them, recreates the road for you. Like and it does a weird thing sometimes, right? But then the thing I posted on LinkedIn yesterday was referencing an email or a newsletter that I got from this company called Marketer Hire. And they were talking about how now Google software has the ability to help you edit product photos using AI. So imagine if you're an e-commerce brand and you have to like take photos, individual product photos. You have to you got to hire a photographer. You need a studio. You need lighting. It's a full day, tens of thousands of dollars thing every time you have a new line come out, right? So imagine if you're a Shopify person or whatever, and you're a small business owner, right? It's a big pain in the butt to get product photography. But now Google uses AI to create different versions of product photography. You can edit them on the spot. Like it's just, and I was thinking like for the small business owner, this is amazing. For the photographer, maybe not so much, and the editor, right? But for the small business owner, holy cow, like that just puts a whole bunch of power like back in the hands of that small business owner and reduces their cost, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, like those are some just very practical things that, hey, if you don't own a business, maybe you don't care. If you're not a marketer, maybe you don't care. But for us, it's really relevant because like these are some game-changing things that are structurally changing the way that things are done, right? How we work. It always usually starts with how we work, and then it trickles down into how we play, right? And how we live and all that kind of stuff. So we're just at the tip of the iceberg now, but I think I still ask myself this question. Maybe this is the bigger picture, Lisi, which is, do I care that it was made by AI or not?
I've had many discussions with people online, offline about this topic. I'm really curious about what you guys think because I have my stance on it. And
I don't know, to be honest.
You don't know? Interesting. You're the first person I've heard. That
I don't think I care. I don't think I care, which means that I don't think I care, right? But I also have this sinking feeling of this, like we live in a world where we don't know what's real and what's not real. But in the end, does that really matter? In the end, like we're all heading towards this idea of the singularity if you want to get like really deep, right? But I don't know, to be honest with you, if I care or not. I think maybe there's certain circumstances where maybe I'll care, but I think generally speaking, I don't think I care if something was made by AI or not. I guess it's really the output that I'm looking at, right?
So if you're listening to a music track that's made by AI, but you love it,
I don't care. I don't think it matters. So the weird things, here's the weird things, right? So Biggie Smalls or Nas rapping a Biggie Small song sounding perfectly like Nas.
Yeah.
I thought it was awesome when I heard it. I was like, holy cow, this is really interesting. Right? But I was like, whoa, this is actually kind of weird too. I wouldn't say it was bad. It's just different, maybe. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I don't know if it's bad.
Different.
I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What about you, Emily?
So I think in my like mid 20s, or I guess I'm going towards my late 20s, so I'm 26 now.
No, you're still mid 20s, girl.
Okay. I'm not sure where the classification is. I haven't gotten there yet. But I think I'm at this stage where like I can put a little bit more effort into like thinking about like the fabric compositions of my clothes and like the ingredients in my food and like the people that make the items that I buy. And so I think that mindset still carries on with like things that are made by AI. As I was writing this last night, I also saw TikTok where it's like pretty local to me, where this business in the Chicago Chinatown has like 3 characters as a part of their logo, and art students had found out that it was AI generated by looking at their hands and their eyes. And so I saw this TikTok, and like the art students were really upset by it, but it also had reached a lot of other art students that were equally as upset by it. And I also put it in, I linked it in our brief.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like really intrigued because I, like, you know, you're not really exposed to like what the kids are saying nowadays. And so like I just like happened to like come upon like this like little micro community within this one video talking about how upset they were about it and like their very strong stances of it. And I think I empathize with them and like how the idea of like artist theft and like, because in AI artist theft because of like the sources that it uses, but I also empathize with like the small business owner that was just like, I want to create something cute that would like generate a lot of traffic to my business. So it's really hard, but at least for how I would try to intentionally spend my money, I think I do prefer like having the opportunity to know like what's going in it and like who's making it.
Like with Lisa, like, and actually the way I think Lisa approaches her art is that like she tries to use AI to enhance like the base concept, I think, that she's like working off of. So like, again, like AI is a tool, right? Like it's as a tool.
And it is tool in my mind because, like you said, there's good AI art and there's really bad AI art, and you can tell like why didn't they do something about it, or how, right? Maybe in their mind it was good. So there is quality that comes with AI art, and I think the quality. Well, I'm talking about art right now. Like the edit quality has to be influenced by the artist because they do a lot of. You'll be surprised how much background editing I have to do with any AI image generated. It's like how to dissect it, re-put them together so that it looks like how I want it. Because when computer generates them, it's kind of all off. Like faces are off, hands are definitely off. We talked about many times. They just can't get hands and feet right. So all that they had to like redo. And sometimes the position is like all twisted, like weird, like no human body moves that way, you know? So that's kind of like there is skill in using AI. And I think I was on a, talk earlier last week, and I kind of compare using stable diffusion as when photography first became a form of art. Because, I asked people like, is photography art? Like, absolutely, yes. They are in museums.
Yeah, but back then, they're like, you're cheating.
Exactly. They are in galleries. People are buying, high dollar, photography compositions.
But what did the portrait artist in the 1870s or whatever say about cameras, right?
Right. So to me, it's the exact same thing. Instead of, for AI artists, instead of using a camera, I'm using stable diffusion. But the end result, I still had to, the artist's vision and style and goal still had to be put into it to create the outcome that they want. It doesn't just happen, right? So that's kind of misconception. Oh yeah, so that's when I talk about art, right? And then I think I find it very interesting the students have that reaction. I mean, been using AI kind of since when it started. And what I've observed was that the younger, the more inexperienced people, like who are more pure in their view of the world, they have an outcry about this. They talk about the copyright, the privacy, the etc. Because like to them it's such a big deal. But I'm in my middle age now. I'm mid-career. I've done a lot of random things, and how I see it is how I see AI in our lives is it's not as extreme, because you hear artists in the old days copying another artist's style all the time. They might not become, Picasso famous, but they'll still make a good living copying another artist's style. So how is that any different than what we're experiencing now, right? Like, you have your Vermeer, and then you have your lesser Vermeers in the Dutch period who will sell the painting for less money, but they're still getting sold by somebody. Yeah. So I kind of see it as an equivalence. Like there is stealing of styles and piracy in all sorts of shape and forms since antiquity. So this is now just become so much easier. It becomes so much faster. I think that's what's scaring people.
Yeah, I was just thinking, you touched on this thing about quote unquote younger people, maybe like naive view about the world, right? And I was thinking about the same thought, but from a different angle. When people get into communities together, there's a little bit of like righteousness in some ways in the way that they group together to look at the world. And that makes a lot of sense because, like, generally speaking, communities are groups of people who are sharing similar views and things like that, right? And it's interesting because I think with some communities, you sort of learn and you sort of see that maybe they are more focused on the principles and values and the social aspects of things, as opposed to the more business, practical, like logical aspects of things, which are very different communities. Mm-hmm. And I think the community that of like the kids or the younger people on this like TikTok, community or like audience, like they're looking at it from the empathetic, like, let's save the world kind of view, right? And hey, we were all there, I think, at one point. And I think it actually spans not just across ages, but just across mindsets and viewpoints, that you're going to have communities and groups of people, whether they're students or professionals. I've had plenty of conversations with professionals like, we can't let AI get out of hand and blah, 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 blah. I was like, well, you let social media get out of hand and all this other, so it's like, it's really interesting to see the mindset of people as they approach things from a more principle value oriented to ones that are more like, hey, what's the real thing going on in the world right now, right? And it's that sort of like, sometimes you draw this dichotomy between creatives and like business people, right? Or like dreamers and like logical people, right? And like there's all this like, there's these dichotomies that happen, and you start to see them as people interpret what's going on in the world around them. And I think you see, and Emily, what you saw on TikTok, I think was a really good example of almost like a tribe, if you would, right? Of people coming together to share a certain viewpoint. Unfortunately, a lot of those viewpoints are like, we can't do this. This is killing the world, so we have to stop doing this. But that's not what, in my opinion, that's not what the world is about. It's about innovation, and innovation brings risks to it and stuff. And if you don't innovate, right, you don't have all these things that we get. But there's certainly risks that come along with it, but that shouldn't scare us, right, from trying to innovate and tackle the big problems.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought up, community, because I think typically we don't really, at this point, we don't really associate AI with communities. Like there's might be two things that has nothing to do with each other on the surface. But as I was doing research on this topic and read up more about things, I feel like there is absolutely an impact. And I think it comes from how AI changes individuals' behaviors as well as an individual's like view, attitude towards the world and other people. So I think what we're going to talk about is kind of opinions and what we think will happen, right? So like, what are some impacts that you think you will see more of, or that will like happen that will affect the community kind of interaction?
I think there's like some big picture things, right? And some like more tactical, like how does it reflect in everyday life? When I think about communities and in AI, I actually think one of the biggest problems with any community or social platform is moderation. And especially as you start to get to scale, right? Like moderation becomes like really, really difficult. So I think I'm actually really excited as a community strategist for what AI can do to help with the really kind of boring part of community, which is moderation, right? It's a really tough job. It's a nasty job, especially like when you're moderating like hate speech and bullying and all that kind of stuff. Like it's a bad thing for humans to have to sift through. And I remember about 5 years ago, there was a lot of media out there about the moderating teams at Facebook and the kind of stuff that they have to see, right? Like basically like seeing like the worst of 4chan and moderating that stuff, right, on Facebook. So I'm really excited for what AI can potentially do with community moderation. I think that's a perfect use case of how we are using AI as a tool to like make life easier and less risky for us. But to me, as a professional and actually as a manager and a leader of people, like I think this is just such an amazing time to be alive as a professional. Like if you're a junior level employee, right? Like you're just out of school, or you're a few years out of school, like you need to figure out how to 10x your output using AI, right? This is a huge opportunity. If you're a junior level employee, like if you can figure out a way to really leverage AI in your workflow, you can do some really impressive things that can really help you skyrocket yourself in an organization. So, I just think back, man, when I was a consultant, like if I had all these tools like ChatGPT and even stupid things like Canva, right? Like all these like new tools that we have now would have made my life as a working professional so much easier. And I could have been doing so much other stuff or browsing the internet all day, trying to clock out at 5 o'clock. But I just think if you're a junior level employee and you're just kind of coming into the workforce, this is an amazing time to really learn some very foundational skill sets, prompt engineering, for example, right? That are going to be is going to be like knowing how to send an email in the future, right? So the problems that you're going to get as junior level employees are going to get more complicated if you don't know how to use some of these tools, I think.
That just made me realize like that's kind of an accountability, right? Now junior member has no excuse to say, I can't do this. I don't know how. It's going to take me too long. There's like excuses
like when
anymore.
Emily sends a social media post over that was supposed to be spell checked by AI, but wasn't spell checked. And the person review it thought that Emily couldn't spell or didn't care enough to like fix bad words or red underlined words, right?
Yeah. So that's interesting though. You just brought up like that expectation between human and human, because now between these two humans that they know there's this, helping tool in between. Now suddenly we have more expectations of each other.
Yeah. And we've always expected there should never be any spelling errors or grammatical errors, period, because we've always had spell check for the last like 20 years, right? So now what's the next expectation? Oh, the social media image you deliver to me, it can't be just a stock image anymore. It's got to be custom now, right?
Right.
Like that I'm wondering, raises the standard.
Yeah. And I'm wondering like on the converse side though, I'm wondering as a community member who are in that community, are they going to be offended if you using tons of AI generated content to feed to them?
So it goes back to that question, like, do I care if it was made by AI or not? And I think the jury is still out for a lot of folks.
So Emily, I think you kind of went into it, like you kind of do care because at least you want to know if AI or like artificial generated information was utilized, right? So like from a community member perspective, would you worry or care if the community platform has a lot of AI generated content?
I think if I wasn't aware, then it wouldn't bother me. But then that comes with the like ignorance is bliss type of mindset, and that's something that I'm trying to grow out of.
Right.
And so like having more knowledge and like being more aware of like what's happening, I think I would then form an opinion. And as the like track has been showing for me so far, it's usually a little bit more negative. But I do also see like the endless like possibilities and like obviously like the brighter sides of it as well. So it's like very like conflicting in my head.
It's very interesting though. Like I think this is a fine line we're towing, right? If as a creator or a platform, you're just dishing or regurgitating what AI is telling you all the time, I would think you kind of lose credibility over time, especially if you especially if you don't tell people you're using AI and trying to kind of like pass by as real content, and then later people find out. I think your credibility will probably get destroyed. But then if you tell people they're using AI, will people think of you as less because your content is not authentic, and they might think, oh, another creator might be doing it themselves. So there's like that weird space we're in right now, and I do believe that in the end, it's the quality of the content, right? If you somehow can prompt AI to generate really high quality content that makes sense, that is in line with your brand's view or the world's view, then maybe that's okay. I don't know. That's kind of an interesting area that we're walking into that I actually have no idea. And I kind of think that in a community, you kind of have to expect both views on AI, right? There are going to be people who are for it. There are going to people think that that's cheating and you're shortcutting something that should be authentic. So I think with AI entering our lives, these conversations will have to be talked about inside a community.
Maybe still asking themselves that question, do I care? And I think anyone that reacts to it is probably more of a emotional reaction to it, if anything. Like, I don't want our world to be dominated by machines or whatever. But I think the jury is obviously like still out, and we're still so early on in this game. But again, I think it's just the hype cycle of the media talking about AI a lot more than it really is right now, to be honest. But don't get me wrong. Like I said, as a professional, it's affected my industry like no other. So I have a front row seat to this disruption, which maybe and actually even in finance, all my finance buddies, there's startups being created around AI and all that kind of stuff, right? So, like it just really depends where you sit and what you do, whether or not you have an opinion on it now, because I don't think it's been as, like, to me, like the most I've seen AI in the real world is like ChatGPT, and even that has fallen off, right? But like probably the best example is the Google Pixel phone, right? Like that is probably the use case for AI right now for consumers. Like, is that going to destroy our society? I think it is weird that you can edit photos and take people out, but what have we been doing in Photoshop for the last 20 years? No photos are real anymore,
That's true. I mean, all the celebrity photos that you see on Instagram are like 100% Photoshopped. Right.
Oh, and you just see, and when you look at like a brand photo shoot, like the Toyota Forerunner in a camping, like you look at the actual picture and then you look at the edited, color graded video or whatever, and it's like, okay, that's not what we were. No, that forest does not look like that. You know what I mean?
But I think like with we're using it for marketing purposes, it seems to me it's totally fine. But like, I don't know. I think
I say that it's okay because it reduces my cost to produce. But yeah,
hey,
it's fine.
I mean, I think that's why AI was created in the beginning, to begin with, to make more money for these companies, right? Come on. Yeah. So I think on some personal level, I don't know how I feel about it. Like if somebody is using AI to generate all their like live images and post on Instagram, I think there's something really wrong with that as well.
But I think it just comes down to personal thing right now. Like everyone has a very different personal opinion about where they might stand on it, right?
But like when you say like all the like nothing you see could be real, you just don't know. But then we're starting to talk like the argument on the other side on AI was like the deep fakes. The future of how good deep fakes will be and how confusing it will be for people, right? So I think with that, it might be good for community growth because now people Like because they can't really trust what they read on Facebook and Twitter, they might have to go into a community and ask, like engage with a real person, a known person, and then talk about these things, right? So,
and in a way that forces, I actually see a place where you almost have to authenticate if a community is real, right? Because communities could very easily be created by bots, and you could be talking to bots because they're that smart now, right? But so it's almost like, is there a place where like you have to authenticate that there's real people in there, right? And you just have to show your ID, or I don't know, right? Like, but
yeah, I think that's a
that
good
it's
point.
real.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you know the people you're interacting with in a known community is real? You don't know, right?
So the perfect example is, we all know they're bots, but any ESPN post, right? And, all the OnlyFans type posts and things like that, all the comments, that the first 100 of them are just straight up bots, right? And obviously everyone knows what they are now because, it's so often, but what happens when they get better and they find their ways into a community and they bypass, some kind of registration form?
Yeah. Remember we saw that LinkedIn post, like it was a bot commented and then the bot commented on the comment and said something really weird.
Yesterday, the guy came in and installed the TV in my house. And so we were just talking about how crazy like TVs are now and how realistic it is and all that. And he was like telling me he like reposted a video on Facebook and of what he thought was the Ukraine war. And he was like, oh shit, this is actually like a scene from Call of Duty. I didn't even realize it until like a week later. I was like, and none of his audience said it either. They all thought it was real too. But you've seen those like cinematic scenes in those like movies, right? Or those games, right? And like it looks so real. Honestly, there's sometimes where I'm watching videos on YouTube of like someone driving through a canyon, and I realized afterwards, oh my God, that was a sim racing game. Like I'll watch it for a good 2 or 3 minutes and then realize I only realize it because I read the comments and they'll be like, oh, what rig are you using? Like, what the so it's crazy. Yeah. It's pretty nuts to see where we are now with just visually how we can kind of create these realities. And so now when you put language processing over the top, it's like, now you have speech and visual that is happening. And it's just, so again, like right now, I don't think we have anything to worry about. If anything, it's a great time to be alive. But I get where Elon is going, right? I get it. There's always an unintended consequence, right?
Right. And I think as community builders and strategists, I think we kind of have the responsibility a little bit to at least inform people about all these, like both sides of things. Right.
And the world that we're going to live in, the responsibility of the consumer of information has never been greater. Like it is so important that you know how to question what you're reading and validate sources and then just not take whatever you're reading at face value because, I don't, again, we're getting into some deeper discussions here, but I don't see a place where AI can it should be regulated, but at the same time, like, how do you regulate it, right? The responsibility kind of has to lie on the person consuming the content at some point. And so, I don't know.
Yeah, but that's why they come into our communities, right? Because we have that layer of, well, hopefully all communities now should put in like security and vetting process for the members, so not let anybody join it and then like have a bigger numbers better, was better. Like, but they should not have that.
Right? You need to find ways to authenticate people or, like give them some hoops to jump through that would, the bots and community already exist. It's like, what's the next step for that? Right.
Yeah. So I think because, when you're on social media, you just really don't know. And that responsibility kind of is laid on you as an individual to debunk or research what you read. But most people don't do that. Right. And so they kind of, like most people probably just read a headline. I do that same thing. I just like in a news article, I just read the headline. I'm not even sure what the article is saying sometimes, right? I'm trying to get better at that for sure. But I think with a community, you kind of have a layer of trust that's kind of pre-built so that when a person comes in, hopefully what they consume is authentic and it's not fake news and it's not some scams, right? So I think that will give community even more purpose to exist and even more important for individuals to be part of the community.
You know what sucks?
A lot of things
that Donald Trump said about fake news, right? When he was saying all that stuff, I was like, man, this guy, like, it was all kind of true. Like, there's a lot of fake news out there, and like, and that's why, like, you can't discredit the guy fully, even though he says like the most ridiculous things, because some of the things he says are kind of true, right? And so, again, like, you start to mix in human nature and tribes and all this other stuff, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think for the time being, like, we have nothing to worry about, and it's an opportunity for communities, for anyone involved in content creation, right? So
yeah, for sure. Wow, that was a pretty good discussion, guys. I feel like we kind of stand on different pillars on this topic, and I think that's kind of how our society is right now with this new technology. So I think everything we're discussing is awesome, and I think this discussion is probably taking place in a lot of places. So thank you guys so much for sharing your thoughts and insights today. And for our audience, if you learned something new from us, please share with your friends, your boss, your coworkers, and anyone who might find this episode helpful. And please hit that subscribe and follow button to get notified. You can also check out the blog page on Toby Agency's website, where we share insights in community building and other marketing tips, such as pay-per-click, email marketing, and much more. And lastly, don't forget to follow us on social at Run with Toby. And see you guys next month. Bye.
Yep.
Bye.